Welcome to the Knock-On Effect podcast, where concussion meets conversation, with Adam Wood and Cliff Butler. Brought to you by Safeguarding You and the Melbourne Headache and Concussion Group. Let's get into this.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Knock-On Effect podcast. We have the amazing Louise Cork, naturopath, joining us today. She's travelled all the way from Ballarat to join us today, and we really appreciate you coming down to have a chat with us in studio. It's always, I think, much more fun and interactive when you've got the person sitting in front of you. And we've got the lovely guys from Proactive here. We need to give them a shout out. They've let us share their space the last couple of times. So we love it here. So welcome, Louise.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
It's really great to be here and talk all things concussion. I'll talk for hours.
We've got an hour. We'll be right. You've got to pick some bikes up in Hoppers Crossing. So
Yes.
We've got two birds with one stone. So it's going to be an eventful day for all of us. But can you give us a little bit of a background about who you are, what you do? Obviously, I've met you through Instagram. I seem to be stalking everyone. How are you? And you're the Concussion Naturopath is your handle. Yep. Inspired me to become the Concussion Osteopath on Instagram. So, tell us a bit about yourself and how you came to be working in this space.
Yeah, I'm a clinical naturopath. So I hold a bachelor degree in health science, also studying a graduate certificate in neuroscience in my spare time, just for fun. And so as a naturopath, we treat the whole person, the whole body. Nothing's random, everything's connected. That's kind of it in a nutshell. And how I came to fall into concussion is, a couple of reasons really. Like I've always had brothers who played football. One of my brothers still coaches football. My husband played football, had several concussions. It's been something we've spoken about. Now my kids are into football. But I think more importantly, and I'll hone this message in, people are dying. People are dying and we're calling it mental health and we're calling it other things, but actually it all starts back with these head traumas and the cascade that happens after that. And that's really serious. And quite frankly, when there's something that I have in my power to do about that, I'm going to do something about it. Yeah, person by person.
I love that. And so that then kind of leading us into our next question really perfectly. So how do you see naturopathy helping these people? Like what is it about? Because to be honest, you get a head impact, you have a concussion, and the first thing you do is usually go to a GP or you go to see your physio and, you're doing all the, the exercises and all the vestibular and kind of visual rehab. But no one would really think about a naturopath straight off the bat. So, what is it from a naturopathic perspective? What is it about concussion that makes it such a unique and challenging thing to work on?
Well, I think if you look at the way that people who have concussion and multiple head traumas, the way they track, eventually they go downhill. And nobody's addressing that. There's nothing that anyone is doing in any other modality. They don't have the tools. And we have the tools. And because we see the whole person, their whole health picture and all the moving parts that make up them as a unique individual, then we can support the body to do what it needs to do to come back into balance and improve outcomes, really. Like, no one's saying we can cure all, but there is a huge gap in the way that we deal with concussion and post-concussion at the moment, which nobody is doing anything about. So here we are. I'm doing something about it.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so, like we said, we're aware of the vestibular challenges that people have. They're often dizzy or off balance after a concussion. We're aware of maybe some of the visual changes, maybe some double vision, some kind of light sensitivity, headaches, etc. There's this kind of cascade of symptoms that occur that we're aware of, and usually kind of working in that acute kind of phase. But what are the things that you're looking for as a naturopath specifically in working with people? And I guess I'll touch on the word, and as an osteopath, I'll work on someone's neck. And so we're kind of working through that kind of scale of all of the kind of areas that get affected with concussion. But I think no one really probably thinks about inflammation in concussion and then how that kind of contributes to the array of symptoms. So is there something that you can speak to on
So I
that?
guess there's a couple of things. So we know posthumously in CTE that there is evidence of chronic low-grade neuroinflammation that we cannot see on scans. We know it's there. So why aren't we doing something about it? Point one.
Yep.
And naturopaths can do something about that. And secondly is that a head trauma or a concussion, multiple head traumas, is far more than an injury to the head. It is a full systemic injury. So on impact, yes, we have all the inflammatory processes happening in the brain to kind of, there's something's happened, we need to repair that. But we also have increased permeability of the blood-brain barrier, which is usually very selective. So that means things can travel through that blood-brain barrier that would normally, not necessarily a good thing. And we also have increased intestinal permeability. Now, this is the thing that nobody is thinking about. And with increased intestinal permeability comes a whole change to the ecology of the gut. And we know, you might have heard, gut-brain axes, that what our gut is doing directly impacts what our brain is doing. And it does that via a number of mechanisms, but right down to the very bacterial species that are living in your gut. And that's why, one reason why, if you have a head trauma, it might be very different to if I have a head trauma, because your bacterial species makeup is different to mine. And each bacteria living in our gut, they produce and or consume different substances. So it becomes really kind of like microscopic chemical reactions. And so there is a lot to it. And then the other thing that no one's thinking about is how the immune system interacts with all that, because the glial cells are part of your immune system. The gut is a huge part of your immune system. So the puzzle gets more complicated than just looking at the head. And I think in terms of inflammation, because no one's addressing the inflammation systemically or in the brain, that those inflammatory loops go from acute to chronic because those loops aren't closed. The body struggles to resolve the inflammation. So we can give, non-steroidal anti-inflammatories or whatever, and that'll just like squash the symptoms for now, but it kind of leaves the mess behind. Yep. The problem still exists. And we know that because we see it at end of life. But we shouldn't be waiting until someone dies to do something about it. And when you work with someone in this way and you address inflammatory drivers and resolve the processes and you see how their symptoms change, it's magic. Yeah. When you see someone go from not being able to work to say, I'm going to go on a 5-month trek, that's pretty amazing.
That is, and you've obviously got some experience patients that are going through this right now that's having some really cool outcomes. And so, are we talking about inflammation being one of those precursors in terms of going from acute to chronic? Is that kind of
So, one thing I often talk about is specialized pro-resolving mediators, and this is something that is derived from omega-3s, and in an injury like a concussion, your body's ability to make and use specialized pro-resolving mediators diminishes really quickly, among other things. But specialized pro-resolving mediators, as the name suggests, they resolve those inflammatory loops. And that's something that we can supplement. It's a specialized supplement. So, there's like different types of fish oil. There's your basic, you can get it at the pharmacy or whatever. And then there's, maybe a clinical cleaner version or whatever. And then we have specialized pro-resolving mediators and plasmalogens, and they do different things. So there's lots of tools like that we can employ to close those inflammatory loops.
And that's obviously why it's important, like for someone to come and see a specialist or someone that specializes in this like yourself, to read something on ChatGPT or Google and go, I hear that I should take fish oil, or maybe I should take, some other supplement like creatine, NAD, magnesium, all the things that you do. Obviously, as an osteopath, I can kind of tap into some, decent kind of supplementation as well. But you're obviously going next level on that. And so I really want to kind of dive into like, what is it exactly? Like, how are you finding these things out? What exactly are you doing as a naturopath?
I
I
ask a lot of questions.
You ask a lot of questions. What kind of tests? Have you got specialized tests that you're doing? Because this gut-brain axis thing really sounds super, super interesting. And I know that, part of the question that I have in my head is, yeah, cool, I can get people to take supplements and like I said, someone can look it up on the internet. Are they actually going to be beneficial to that person? And you touched on it with the specificity of what you're actually prescribing. But if your gut isn't functioning right, are those supplements going to be kind of useful, like a little bit, a lot? Like,
Yeah, you do. When we prescribe from a naturopathic perspective, we are really prescribing for the person in front of us, for their own unique picture, because like the way you were born, the way you were raised, what illnesses you had in childhood, how many times you've had antibiotics, there's a gazillion things that make up you and why your outcomes would be different. So we have to prescribe for you. And that's highly nuanced. And yes, so clinical questioning is the absolute first point of call. So we ask lots of questions. So we don't just ask about the concussion injury. We go right back in your health history, bit into your family history, and we go through, well, I do, sort of every body system, asking lots and lots of questions, looking for clues. And then if you could see in my brain, it's like this giant mind map of all the things connecting together, because nothing is random and everything's connected. You had a concussion and 10 years later, all of a sudden you're depressed, not random. You had a concussion and then all of a sudden you're getting 5 colds and flus a year, not random. So then we take that information and go, okay, if we do some functional testing, what test is going to give us the most information right now? Is it pathology? Or I find really valuable to actually test the microbiome with metagenomic sequencing. So find out exactly who's living in that gut. Do we want them there or not? And what is the terrain like? What's the state of the terrain? So we're looking at the mucosal layer, intestinal permeability. Is there lots of zonulin floating around? So you hear about leaky gut and things like that. So you've got all these junctions in your gut like this, right? Zonulin is the protein that sits in those junctions to keep it tight and selective. Yeah. And when that breaks away, and you find that in the stool, that means
something's open.
These junctions are open, and that means things can travel through the intestinal lumen that wouldn't normally go that way, or they wouldn't normally be allowed. So if you've got bacteria that are producing unfavorable substances, like lipopolysaccharides, for example. That's a big word.
That is a big word, yeah.
This goes through the intestinal lumen and your body's like, toxin, and then, hello, inflammation.
Yes, right.
An inflammatory response.
Does that then lodge in your brain? Because you're talking about the tight junctions and obviously you said that the same tight junctions exist in the brain that exist in the gut.
Yeah.
So are these
blood-brain barrier is selective as well?
So are these things now then starting to kind of come out of the gut and then go into the brain?
So your microbiome is always talking to your brain, and information travels via the vagus nerve, the 10th cranial nerve. So there's lots of little receptors on there trickling up, and these can be beneficial or can be unbeneficial. For example, I mentioned lipopolysaccharides or LPS. They are unbeneficial substances produced by gram-negative bacteria, but then you could or should hopefully be producing IPA. And this is a beneficial, not the beer soz.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, you think of it like the beer, right?
Yeah.
I'm not sure how beneficial that is though.
Yeah,
but anyway, IPA is a beneficial substance, and this can cross the blood-brain barrier, and it's anti-inflammatory.
Right.
So that's like in the most simple terms of the biochemistry, but IPA producing microbes, we love them. Yeah. And butyrate and things like that, beneficial substances. So that, kind of goes, oh, what am I eating? What am I feeding my microbiome? Yeah. But on injury, with all the things that happen, it gives different bacteria the opportunity to proliferate and maybe that's not a good thing, depending on who's living in your gut. Yeah. So I often think, wouldn't it be amazing if, say like sporting clubs and things where people, we know they're continuously exposed to continuous head trauma. It's going to happen. It's part of their job. Imagine if we optimize their microbiome pre-injury.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a huge opportunity,
massive
to
opportunity.
mitigate
Yep.
the negative outcomes. Yes, we still have to do lots of work in the instance of an injury, but imagine if you didn't have those gram-negative bacteria, or they were, all the good ones were so happy and thriving that it mitigated the risks of those substances crossing the microbiome.
Adam and I always talk about we're not here to stop sport. We're really pro sport. We love sport. I mean, I've just spent the weekend with my son trying to trial for a lacrosse team, and it's just a beautiful thing, the community coming together and everyone, staying fit and healthy and off their phones. So we don't feel like concussions are going to happen, right? They're going to happen, and we don't, yes, maybe we might want to alter training patterns, etc. We can. That's a discussion for another day, and it's something we touched on with Al in one of our podcasts. But what we are about is getting the message out there so that we can actually look after people after they are concussed to the best of their ability. Yes. And why it's something that it's so amazing to be talking to you today, and it's something I'm loving is going, well, there's this whole picture that we're not thinking about. And part of it would be, what about if we just went around and to the clubs, we've got a baseline screen your players, so if they do get concussed, we can actually objectively rule them in, rule them out, and manage them through return to play.
Yes.
But what about if we strengthen their microbiome? That's amazing.
Yeah.
Just went around and how would you do that? What would be involved with that?
So, well, first you test, because test, don't guess.
True. Yeah.
And that's probably like, with the supplement thing as well. You can throw everything at the wall and hope something sticks.
Yeah.
But if you are clinically precise, then you're going to have better outcomes as well. So test, don't guess. What is going on in that microbiome? And then you work to fix that. Yeah. So it really depends on what, it shows. If you need to repair the mucosal layer, you might look at using serum bovine immunoglobulins or something like that. So there's lots of specialized things that you can do. But establishing that baseline, that's like number one dream. Come on, guys. You're going to be exposed to this. Let's get the gut right first so that your risks are lowered.
Yeah. And what risks are we talking about there? We're saying, obviously, we say concussions happen. Are we talking about reducing the risk of, we're not saying we're going to get you back to play quicker, right? But are we saying we're trying to reduce the risk of that young man or girl or boy or girl being depressed at 25? Is that what we're talking about?
Well, there's that. Yeah, we're talking about longevity as well, because there's a lot of evidence that suggests that symptoms worsen decades later. And I see that clinically. Like I see someone, I might see someone who had a car accident 25 years ago. And then when you timeline everything out, you go, oh, yeah, okay, I can see how this decline is happening. Yeah. And, they came to see me for maybe a skin issue.
Right.
Yeah?
Yeah.
But what's happening in your gut determines what's happening in your skin as well. But I think, back to your question, what are we trying to do? Have a think about someone who's had a concussion. Let's use football as a relatable example. They've had a serious concussion and then they come back to play. What happens when they come back to play? There's a couple of things that happen really commonly. They have lower limb injuries. Yep. They might do a groin, hamstring, things like that. And also they might get hit. It could be any part of their body really, but they might have another head trauma and they fare much worse than they did in the first instance. And then the other thing that happens is the difference between someone who's knocked out cold and the person who's like, oh, yeah, I can pass my concussion test and goes out and keeps playing, and then they decline after. And this is all the inflammatory processes that are happening in the background. And maybe that leads us to glial priming.
Yeah. Well, that's where it's one of our first questions that we had there about the glial system and how it works. And we're all now talking about it again. Like now people are starting to talk about this little system that drains your brain and then it's injured during a head knock. And I obviously heard you have a chat with on another podcast about that. I'd love to hear your kind of take on that and how it works, what it does and how you can influence it.
Yeah. So I guess there's probably two parts to that. So there's the glymphatic system, that's waste removal, kind of like your lymphatic system for your brain. I love that it was only discovered in 2012. Like how neat is science? Yeah. We're always discovering new things. So glial cells are like the immune cells in the brain, and they're always on the lookout. So their job is surveillance, looking for danger. Oh, something's happened. I'm going to go and I'm going to go fix that. But they kind of get hyperfixated when we don't give them the support they need to resolve, and they just keep going. And then we end up with what's called glial priming. So essentially, what those glial cells are primed, they're ready to go. They're ready to like spring back into action. So like I could even punch you in the arm really hard and reactivate those.
So they never really switch off. They never really
unless you actively work to switch them off, and then they're probably still there, which is why, you know, head trauma after head trauma after head trauma after head trauma becomes worse and worse and worse and worse. Yeah. Like that's a simplistic way of putting it, but
yeah, definitely. And so we're talking about. I mean, my job sounds remarkably easy compared to your job. Like I do the vestibular stuff, the balance stuff, the eye stuff, a bit of neck stuff. We obviously like to try to influence, you know, drainage and venous return and that kind of lymphatic system through treating the neck, thorax, and all the diaphragms. Obviously,
but I can't do that.
Yeah,
right?
no, but
right.
I mean,
So you see, like how all the parts have to come together.
So there's that really great synergy between practitioners that are all looking at this. But you are looking at like lymphatic system. You're looking at, and there's some words you've used in here that I kind of know, but I mean, you're obviously looking at, you know, the junctions in the brain, like, you know, the kind of blood-brain barrier. We're talking about microbiome. We're talking about specific cells that are coming out. You spoke about kind of depression and kind of anxiety and concussion before. Obviously, that's through the kind of that interleukin pathway, I think, is it? Or what? There's a pathway there as well.
Yeah, there's lots of things. So there's I don't know, you may or may not have heard of something called the ping axis.
No.
So ping axis is like the psyche, immune, nervous system, gut.
Yep.
You've got axes for everything.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I love it.
HBA axis.
Yeah.
Anyway.
We haven't even talked about that yet.
Stop it. We'll be here all day. So there are so many moving parts. And I guess from why I love what I do is that, you know, I love to find out all the bits and pieces and put them together and then help the person unravel it. You have to be curious, and you have to see the person for the whole person that they are, not just their injury, but everything that led up to that and everything that's happened after that. So I think there was something in the media, it was maybe last week, that worrying is what causes CTE, not the actual injury. Oh, yeah, Did you see that?
You know, I missed that one, yeah.
I'm like, yeah, mate, like if I had a concussion, I'd be pretty worried about what was going in my brain, because literally these people, there are millions of people who've had head trauma, right? Not just in sport, domestic violence survivors, in the Defence Force, emergency services, car accidents. There's so many ways you could have a head trauma. All these people are just like, oh, okay, yep, you're good. You can go back to work or you can go do whatever you want to do. But they're just left marinating in neuroinflammation and systemic inflammation. And nobody's doing anything about that. Yeah. Except for me. Can change that.
No, that's why hence we're here. Hence
that's why we're here.
And why it is so interesting. And I think, you know, it's important to break it down for people today, because I didn't understand, to be honest, how complicated your job is. Like, you know, as I say, the systems that we've mentioned today, like even just in the last, you know, I don't know how long we've been going, like 30 minutes or so, it's not just one thing. It's like so many moving parts.
So many things. Yeah, it really is. But the other thing is that, you know, when I'm having a conversation with you like this, that could sound a bit intimidating to someone who's like, oh my God, what does that mean? But when I'm working with a client, I will always break things down into language that they can understand. And we always say, focus on the step in front of you, not the whole staircase, right? Because otherwise it becomes overwhelming. So clinically, you have to meet the person where they're at as well. And people who have had multiple head traumas, concussions, that kind of stuff, attention span can be limited. And also taking in information can be limited. So, you know, like write everything down and make sure you just have to focus on doing these things, taking these things, and make it simple and accessible.
Yeah, good. And I know the way that you tend to work is, again, you're meeting the person where they are. A lot of these people are on work cover or kind of some maybe third-party scheme. They're not working.
Yeah.
They're a victim of some kind of maybe a crime or maybe a
Yes.
car accident or whatever, and I know that you were that again you meet them where they are, and like that's the thing that I liked about talking to you was kind of like, yeah, you're not going to tackle everything at once. You've got to go through and work bit by bit. Back to that thing you just said about CTEs from worrying. I feel like it leads us into a good segue because often these people are worried. Marinating's a great word. I think they are often sitting in that kind of the neuroinflammation, the worry, and it's a chicken and egg scenario for me around. And I turn to you for kind of your expertise on this around neuroinflammation and it creating anxiety and depression, and like they're kind of they're one of the like they
we
work
go
together.
back to the gut.
Yeah.
So when we think about anxiety, depression, all these kind of things, we're thinking about neurotransmitters, right?
Yep.
And altered neurotransmitter function. And most of our neurotransmitters start their life in the small and large intestine.
Yeah, right.
So this is where the microbiome becomes really, really important, and the bacterial species that are living in there, because they produce, they contribute to the production of neurotransmitters. So some microbes produce GABA, for example. So I always say to people, and it doesn't matter if you're seeing me for concussion or something else, but if you say, yep, I've experienced low mood or I'm constantly anxious, yeah, we're going to look at all the obvious factors. How much coffee are you drinking? Are you drinking on an empty stomach? All those kind of things. But it becomes a thing where you can't think your way out of it, right? Because it is your biochemistry. So we have to biochemistry your way out of it.
Yeah.
So
and rest isn't going to cut the mustard
rest
here,
ain't
right?
going to cut it. That's just going to
yeah.
keep you ruminating.
Yeah.
So you can't think your way out of it, and your psychology and your physiology are not separate, in my opinion. They are intrinsically linked.
Yeah.
So if you have a big weekend and you're drinking all weekend, you're probably going to feel really anxious and bit yuck, disconnected for the week after.
Wednesday. That's the Westgate Wednesday, isn't
Westgate
it?
Wednesday.
Yeah, that's what we call it. Yeah, it's been a long time. Louise. 45, can't do Westgate Wednesdays anymore. Yeah, no. But
I don't drink alcohol at all anymore. Can't do it.
Well, lucky I didn't get you a present, which was a bottle of champagne. I'm glad I skipped that one. Yeah.
So really, we come back to the gut again. What's happening in your gut is so important for how you feel in your psychology. And I mentioned the ping axis before, the psyche, the immune system. 80% of your immune system's in your gut.
Yeah.
Nervous system, highly governed by the 10th cranial nerve. So all these, nothing's random.
No, it's not.
So, you might go and see a cardiac specialist for all things heart, or a lung specialist for your lungs. But when you see a naturopath, we're looking at all the bits and pieces. And so, yeah, don't see me for surgery, don't see me for a manual adjustment. But when you need the whole picture and you need to understand the moving parts, then, yeah, that's what we can do something about. Yeah.
And so the vagus nerve. I mean, we've been going 35 minutes here. I reckon you could probably talk 35 minutes on the vagus nerve, right? I think let's tell everyone what the vagus nerve is, because I think that's one of the biggest things for me as an osteopath working in concussion is trying to get that balance between the two nervous systems. And I think a lot of people don't even know what they are. And people are familiar with flight and fright, but maybe not so familiar with the parasympathetic system with the vagal nerve.
Yeah.
And that plays a massive role. And I feel like it's a nice segue from the thinking causes CTE. I think that's a completely wrong statement, but I can if we kind of step back through it, you can kind of go, oh, well, hang on.
Maybe the information superhighway has something to do with this.
Yeah.
So the way I describe the vagus nerve to people who aren't familiar with it, so we've got 12 cranial nerves in the brain, big nerves, and the 10th cranial nerve is different to all of the others. So all of the others are single direction, and the vagus nerve is bidirectional.
So it's receiving information.
It's giving and receiving.
Yep. It's then providing kind of like, what would you say, like information to move or do or whatever. Yeah.
Correct. Yep. And we won't get into polyvagal theory because then we really will be here all day. But in simple terms, you have fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and rest, digest, safety. And we should come in and out of those relatively easily. They both serve a function. Certainly fight, flight, freeze, fawn gets a bit of bad rap, but it's evolutionary, it's survival, right?
You're not playing football unless you've got a bit of that going on as well, right?
Correct.
Like that's that whole
Yes.
thing, yep.
But what happens is you kind of come out into a fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and you just don't come all the way back down. And then you come out again, you come down even, you kind of zigzag all the way up here, and you're just stuck in a holding pattern. Yeah. Your nervous system becomes like the smoke alarm that doesn't know if you burnt the toast or if the house is on fire. Yeah. And we just, it needs to come back out into rest, digest, safety. When you're stuck in this holding pattern, your body is not prioritizing anything other than survival, blood pressure, pumping blood around, that kind of thing. Yeah. So you'll find that your digestion is off. And that could come in many different forms for many different people. It might be bloating, it might be fluctuating bowels, it might be nausea, any number of things. Sleep disrupted. So I'm going to sleep, but I'm waking up feeling tired, so not rested, or I can't get to sleep. There could be any number of sleep issues presenting. And, this feeling like I'm being driven by a motor and I can't stop, but also I can't do anything. I need to do everything and I can't do anything. People will describe this when they're really stuck in that holding pattern. And then they become kind of adrenally fatigued and they're like zoned out, unable to focus, concentrate, all kinds of things. Rest, digest, safety is where we should come when we're sleeping. Our digestion happens. We should be waking refreshed. That lymphatic clearance is happening in the brain while we're sleeping, all those good things.
That's so important, that point as well, is that the lymphatic clearance is happening when you're sleeping.
Yeah, so that system is pretty much only active when you're asleep, as we understand it today. Yeah. And it is clearing debris from the brain. So when you've had head trauma, there is debris that needs to be cleared, all those, all that inflammatory waste, basically. So sleep's important too. All the things.
Otherwise, you end up with what you've just basically described there is the wired but tired.
Yeah,
right?
wired but tired. Yeah, that's the word.
That's what I was just racking my brain there. Didn't get enough good sleep last night. And then obviously the vagus has massive implications for gut too. Yeah, in terms of sensing gut and working with gut.
About the enteric part of the nervous system. Yes, and pain perception as well. So all of those things become really important.
So I think the word, again, we're using to put this into, we love blankets or like little, capsules is autonomic dysfunction or autonomic dysnomia that people kind of say. So that autonomic nervous system is on fire and flight or fright. Yeah. And I guess what we're kind of coming to here, just to summarize, because for people, is that the inflammatory process that's occurring within your body post head impact, driven by the gut and the vagus nerve, really is what kind of sets you up for those kind of persistent, ongoing kind of symptoms that a lot of people are overlooking. So we're talking about ANS dysregulation. Hang on a second, I thought it was going to be 21 days and I meant to feel better. Why am I now 4 weeks into this or 5 weeks into this and I'm still not feeling right? And the main thing is my balance is good. I'm cognitive. I'm cognitive. I can speak to you, but I go to school and I can't get through half a day, or I go to work and I can't look at the screens. I'm irritable. I can't sleep. So we're talking about this umbrella, is the word I'm looking for, of autonomic dysnomia, basically.
Yeah. And the other thing people describe as being really overstimulated, like so irritated by things like the exhaust fan on the stove, stuff like that can really set them off. All of those things are signs that there is something deeper going on. And I think the main message is that you don't have to just sit in that. There are things that you can do about it. I think that's the key message.
Yeah. 100%.
And if there are possibilities to improve outcomes, then we should do that. Yeah.
And I love the idea of getting in front of it.
Yeah.
And we're not saying this to be, factual, but if you look at it, look at the anatomy, look at the physiology, and look at what happens after an impact. Well, what about if we primed the gut before?
I've probably got a good example. Someone that I've seen who's a professional athlete who competes internationally, and they were at the point, and sometimes you ask these people about, how many concussions have you had? And they're like, I have had 8, but only 3 of them were bad. And you're like, yeah, they're all pretty bad. And then once you unravel things, and then so I tested this person's gut, and their intestinal permeability was like through the roof, but they had really good bacteria in their gut. So they had some really good things going for them. So that process was, within 6 weeks, they were back in the gym, they were back training, and now next year they're going to compete again, which they didn't think that they could do before. They couldn't even put their gear on to participate in their sport. Wow. So, you can turn things around quickly if you've got the right information, and that's not for everyone. Everyone's health story is different. So sometimes it might take months or years, but that's better than the steep decline of cognitive dysfunction and other things that pop up that maybe you don't think about, hormonal dysregulation. And that can look different for males and females. And, it can be irritability and anger and dysregulated testosterone, that kind of stuff. Or I always think about AFLW players, and, endometriosis is a condition that a lot of women suffer from, and it is, in my opinion, a gut problem first. And those LPS producers, lipopolysaccharide producers in the gut, are highly implicated in that. What happens when they have a concussion? When we already, imagine if we could get their microbiome right before they were injured. Yeah. I don't know. It's just if we can, we should.
Like what you're talking about is that you're talking about a quicker turnaround in symptoms, or a quicker improvement in symptoms.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, we're not saying we're going to get them back earlier or sooner, but people want to feel better, because there is life outside of sport.
Correct.
We're going to school, we're going to work, we're doing these things. So we need to, if we can have our symptoms resolving in a shorter time span, then that's a win for us. So that's massive. But I also feel like the thing is those accumulative hits, like you were saying, that basically, you kind of haven't maybe physiologically recovered from the first, despite the fact that your symptoms have gone, and we've given you that buffer of 14 days of symptom free and whatever. Yeah, but we're still not really getting that kind of, we're not getting back to where we need to get to. So we've got CTE at the end of the line there, which is, a horrible, outcome for people. But that's all right. Yeah, good.
Like a Band-Aid.
That's the way. So I feel like what we're talking about here is, I'm going to start again. Hang on. Where was I going with this? There we go. All right. So I feel like what we're talking about here is, how do we progress people through to the best version of themselves after a head knock? Because it's like, or I won't say head knock, that'll kill me, head impact. So, how are we reducing symptoms quickly? How are we then setting them up for success moving forward? How are we reducing end game risks? I feel like that's kind of what we're talking about with what your work is. It sounds like we're missing a massive portion of concussion care for everyone.
Yeah, there is. And I think that's probably the main reason why I do what I do, because there is a big gaping hole in what we do at the moment, and people are left just to decline. And like you said, the end of the road, CTE, that's not very nice. MND, Parkinson's, dementia, or significant mental health challenges, that all of those things lead to death. I don't think anyone wants that. So if we can, we should do something about it. And probably we didn't even talk about my favorite thing, which is herbal medicine.
Yeah, well, this is that's my next question on here, was to say, we've talked about all these amazing things. What is it that you actually do as a naturopath? How do you go about your
witchcraft
amazing
and sorcery?
I was going to say witchcraft. I was going to just say craft. How do you go about it? What is it that you actually do?
Yeah, so I mean, herbal medicine is so cool. It's highly bioavailable, and each herb does more than one thing. So when every person I see, like, I don't think I would ever have made 2 herbal formulas the same, because it's for the person in front of you. So you can tick a lot of boxes in one bottle, just by piecing together that person's puzzle. So, yeah, they've got some brain stuff going on. So you're going to use some herbs that are great for that. But those herbs also do other things systemically. And then maybe they need some liver support, or maybe they need some hormone support. And, you can package all that up in one bottle. Tastes disgusting, tastes better than how you feel is what I always say. And it's over in a second. Yeah. But it is amazing when you see the right formula for the right person do its work. It's incredible. Really, really incredible medicine, and very unique. Obviously, we live in an age of pharmaceuticals, and, we want the quick fix, or, stop the symptoms, stop this. Herbal medicine really works to resolve, and to support the body to come back to do what it is designed to do when we've taken the conditions away. And when you have a head trauma, we take away the conditions that the body needs to thrive, basically. It's just one piece of the puzzle, but it is a really cool piece of the puzzle that does some amazing work.
How long am I expecting to take this lovely stuff for in terms of recovery? And obviously everyone's different in terms of where they want to get to as well.
Yes.
But usually you're looking at a time frame of months, years, weeks.
If you're looking at an acute phase, maybe it's weeks. But if you're looking at someone who's had multiple head traumas, or we're dealing with the head trauma, 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the track, it's going to be longer. Yeah, because those symptoms have been going longer. And if for want of a better term, it's slow medicine. Yeah, because we're not suppressing, we're not pacifying, we're not doing anything like that. We are restoring. So that takes time. And if you come to me 20 years after a head trauma, the symptoms that you're experiencing, they didn't happen overnight. They happened over 20 years. So that takes time to unravel. And we're impatient and we want to feel better now, but what's the cost of doing nothing?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So you can take my delicious herbs and go forward, or you can not take them and keep declining.
You spoke earlier about some patients that you have, and you gave a few kind of timelines there. Like you see change within the first 4 to 6 weeks, though, don't you? Like you were saying,
there's usually for some people it's a big shift, and others it's shift the needle a little bit. So for someone who has had multiple head traumas, it might be a matter of increasing their energy span from an hour and a half every morning to 2 to 4 hours. That's something that I've seen. Or someone, who hasn't been able to work, concentrate, do all the things that they love doing, and now they're going to do a 5-month trek. It's pretty profound. Or the other person I mentioned, unable to compete in their field, now they're going back to compete, which is pretty magical. So yeah, and they're just like the athletic ones. There's all the everyday, people who are now thriving in their family life or their job. They're finding parenting easier. They're sleeping better. All those things are really meaningful to someone's everyday life and their quality of life. And so, yeah, why are we leaving people to just go down the slippery slope?
Yeah, 100%. As I said, as a parent and as someone who works with this, I just am really excited, and I think I've repeated myself about 3 or 4 times, but just that there is something we can do in the acute phase, in the subacute phase, to actually know that we're improving that physiological element to concussion, because that's the unseen. We can't see that. Yeah. We see the symptoms and we see people struggling, but to know that, maybe it is, all right, cool. Because my biggest thing is the accumulation of knocks. And like you mentioned before, each one seems to be less and less and less force needed to things. So if there's some way through cleaning up neuroinflammation or bodily inflammation that we can help maybe, and we're maybe just thinking outside the box here, that we can help to restore that kind of pattern that happens, that's really exciting.
Give people back the life they deserve. I'm not saying we're going to do all this work and you can just go and get more head trauma. Please don't do that. No. Definitely please don't do that. But it is about improving outcomes. And, like I said, if you can, you should. And we absolutely should And I'm really glad that we're having this conversation because it starts now, because this is, like we said, this is a huge gaping hole in the way that concussion is spoken about and treated in the, in the mainstream or the standard of care, whatever you want to call it. But I think I said to you before we started recording, like, what is the cost of this standard of care if it's your loved one or if it's you? Like, you want to live your life to its fullest, not look at the road ahead and go, oh, that's a big downhill. Nobody wants that, I don't think.
No, and like you said, I think you mentioned before about the kind of, and I don't know how to say this, is that, well, you said the mental and the physical working together. And I think it's really about acknowledging that as well, that, why do I have these symptoms? What's going on in my life? I'm angry all the time. Geez, I really like beer. That's amazing because it silences the voices in my head, or it makes me kind of escape myself for a little while. All these different bits and pieces, my relationship's breaking down. But to know that it's actually probably got physiological roots within your body is, I think, groundbreaking in this space, to actually be able to link those two things together.
Yeah, people think they're going crazy.
Yeah.
Like, I'm experiencing all this stuff and they're constantly being told, no, nothing wrong with you. No, you're just, or you're worrying or, whatever.
But if you're worrying, you're activating your flight or fright. You're not allowing your vagus nerve to do its thing. You're stuck in the holding pattern. You feel crazy. A lot of people, when they come and see you, I'm certain would feel a great sense of relief that they're not going crazy and that there is actually a reason, the process that's happening in their body that's making this kind of, mental scenario for them, or this kind of where they're occupying.
When you listen to someone's story and then you can say, okay, so you're experiencing this and this is how I see all this connected together, and you see their face go, their face softens, and I feel like that's really their first step in feeling better. Okay, there's something we can do about it. B, I'm not going crazy. And C, I don't have to continue on this path. So, just telling their story in the first instance is the first part of healing, I think. And no one's listening to their whole story.
They're not. Well, maybe we think we are, but I think we need to open up to these elements here. And I know I had an experience with a patient where I was working with them, and their main thing was they couldn't sit at a TV or a computer screen. They worked in tech, so that kind of like wasn't a good thing for them. And we were working on them, and they were getting good responses from manual therapy. But I was like, why don't you go and try and see a naturopath? And they went to, apparently they had a relation who was a naturopath, and I never saw them again. And so then I started to go, well, what have I done there? And got in contact 3 months later, and this person said, I changed my life. I went to see the naturopath, and those symptoms that were kind of sticking around vanished. And so hence the reason why we're here, that more people need to have those experiences, I think, and understand that there's more they can do than just go and see the physio or sit in a dark room or just try to sit it out, because they can make a difference in their life. So I hope that we haven't absolutely bamboozled everybody, and that we're trying to keep it kind of that just highlight how important your role is in the concussion journey, and that basically you're trying to influence so many systems, but generally speaking, the autonomic nervous system, the inflammatory pathways within the body that are derived in the gut. That's making it really simplistic, and I'm sorry, because it's been so amazing.
It's a good way to put it. And like I said, people understanding that everything's connected and nothing is random is probably the key message. Yeah, all the complicated sciencey stuff behind it, that's there. The person who's experiencing the symptoms, they don't have to know the details of that. They just have to know that if they do X, Y, Z as, prescribed, then, we should see some shifts in their condition.
So my advice, and I'm going to probably answer my own question here because I was going to ask you this question, but I feel like my advice to anybody that comes in to see me or has a head impact or is to go and see your naturopath. Alongside, you should have a team care arrangement going on around this with multiple people working with you. You probably should be seeing, neuropsych, and you seeing your osteopath or your physio for support. but you have to see your naturopath. I just think it's so important. And where I really love that is that, you can change so much about what you're feeling and suffering. And even if you aren't really suffering at the high end, just go and see a naturopath and see if you can optimize your system, because I think that's just amazing. But what would be the one piece of advice that you'd give a parent or a player or an athlete trying to optimize their brain or their situation after a concussion?
Yeah, I mean, definitely come and see you.
Yeah.
You're right. You did answer your own question.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty stressful when you're in the moment of an acute injury. But I think the most important message is that you know that there is help available and, that the gap is being filled. So, and, we can support you.
Yeah.
There's gazillions of naturopaths. And maybe there's an opportunity that we need to train them more specifically in concussion, but that's another problem for another day. For now, optimizing that gut is just one key thing that you can do.
So
the rest will follow.
I'm very envious of you because I can't work online a hell of a lot. I do some virtual management of concussion for people, but it's usually in the acute early stages, and then the return to play stages we can do that. But my best work is done with these here. You obviously work online. People don't need to go to Ballarat to see unless they want to come up there for a
I always welcome anyone to come in person if they want. It's beautiful to, that's why you do your podcast in person, right? It's so much better. But I really don't want location to be a limitation to this work, and that's why I work online for concussion. So I can see anyone. I can pretty much see anyone in the world, really. Yeah. And I choose not to see USA and Canada because it's it's an insurance nightmare.
Yeah. And the timeline, you'd be up
and the
at 3 a.m.
timeline,
trying to sort it out.
I'll be working at 2 a.m.
Yep.
But pretty much anywhere in the world, we can support people. So, but there's enough people in Australia that need our support right now.
So you're sending herbs through you're sending your herbal medicine through the mail. You're seeing people online. And the great news is that you're trying to, or you will be moving into predominantly managing concussion with a lot of people. So you're going to niche yourself into that and have lots of availability for people. You're online. Herbs come in the mail.
Yep. Shipped Medical Express.
Yep.
I even work Saturdays and Sundays sometimes.
Yep. I'm always surprised to hear how much testing material, we'll call it, is travelling in the Australia Post as well. You told me about that last time that, if you want
me to do what?
Yeah, you're going to.
You want me to put what in the fridge?
Yeah. You want to put it in a bag and send it in the post. So you do all your testing, everything's remote.
Yeah.
Where can people find you, Louise? Because I think it's just.
Yeah. So, my Instagram is Concussion Naturopath, and my website, which my new refreshed website is about to be launched, but that's the concussionnaturopath.com. So, but my inbox is always open. If people have questions, they want to know anything, please always feel free to reach out, because the more we can share this message, the more we can share that this big gaping hole in treatment can be filled. That's only a good thing for everyone.
I think it's just so exciting, and I've learned so much today. My head is complete. I thought I knew a bit about naturopathy and concussion, but my head's completely swimming. And as I said, I think the key take-home message is don't marinate.
Yeah.
Get ahead of it. Be proactive. Go and get your microbiome sorted out before you go and get a head impact. But if you do get a head impact, know that a naturopath can make a huge difference to how you feel, how quick you recover, and it's just another person that should be involved in your team of concussion specialists.
Absolutely. Yeah, naturopaths need to be on the table and in the conversation. Yeah.
Awesome. Hey, well, I've learned so much. I hope everyone else has learned so much. There's some massive words in there that I'm sure everyone's chat GPTing right now.
Send me a DM and I'll tell you what they are.
Yeah, jump on, have a bit of a look at Louise's Instagram handle. She's just such a fantastic person to have here today. Thank you for driving down all this way and having this conversation with us, because I think it really is important and just paramount. So, lots of love. Thank you. And everyone, if jump on and check out Louise's Instagram and heal your brain. Thanks.